letter, and then I put it in perspective. And so what they're writing, what they're doing, it is me who is writing, but I'm using the hand. So Paul is writing of Colossae. So that was around 62 AD. And if you read well, you find that this letter of Colossians was written around the same time Paul was writing Philemon and Ephesians. So these three letters, Colossians, Philemon, and Ephesians, were all written by Paul around the same time when he was in Rome, in jail, in prison. And these letters were sent through Tychicus, and Onesimus, who actually were used to send the letters. And so the church in Colossians came to be, this is the story in a nutshell. A man called Epaphras traveled to Ephesus and had Paul preach and responded to the gospel. And when he heard the gospel, he responded, accepted Christ as the Lord and Savior. One of the things that we usually emphasize on here is we preach the gospel, we share the good news with boldness. So this man, Epaphras, goes back to his home small town of Colossae and begins to share the gospel, and then a church is planted at Colossae. And then now this man Epaphras and the church is planted. I hope that's why I'm saying next Sunday don't come by yourself. Make sure you bring someone else. Make sure you share the good news this week. So Epaphras shares the good news and a church is planted at Colossae. Then there's some heresies going around. There's some false teachings. When you say heresy, we mean false teachings. Then the same man, Epaphras, goes to visit Paul and begins to share what is happening and the challenges that the church at Colossae was experiencing. And so Paul decided, after hearing what was going on, he decided to write this letter in response to the heresies, to the problems, to the bad teachings, to the false teachings that were around, but also to encourage the church. Are we together? If we were still together, I want you to raise your hand if you're still together, all right? So we're still right there. So a man, Epaphras, gets the gospel, is faithful, shares the gospel, and a church is planted. We're talking about church planting, and we can only church plant when people of God are sharing the gospel. And that is the Great Commission. We exist to glorify God through the fulfillment of the Great Commission. So Epaphras is one of the examples of a guy, he got the gospel and then went and fulfilled the Great Commission. And by fulfilling the Great Commission, a church was planted at Colossae. And so Paul writes to be able to help with the challenges. And as I was looking at the heresies that were at Colossae, I see that that is not different from Mahoko, that's not different from Gisenyi, it's not different from Rwanda, it's not different from East Africa, it's not different from where you are. This is the practice of street